Mr. Sebastian Lim from SET Academy, and I teach the SET 3 and SET 4 program. And we're very honored to have with us Mr. Sam Lee, who has been teaching for many years. Mr. Lee, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How many years have you been teaching chemistry at the JC section?
I've been teaching since 2003, so that's about 17 years.
So I guess that means you must have seen a lot of students over the years.
Yeah.
And have understand very well the syllabus.
Well, yes, the syllabus does change over the time. Currently it's going another round of change in the future.
I see.
So, but currently, yeah, I'm quite comfortable with the syllabus.
Yeah, and I believe you also have seen many batches of students, their antics over the years, as well as like the pitfalls like for the syllabus. And so, but for today, we want to understand a little bit more about the H1 chemistry versus H2 chemistry to help our viewers to decide what to choose for their subject combination. So can you tell us a little bit more? What are the major differences between H1 and H2 chemistry?
Okay. H2 chemistry has got 4 papers for exams. Paper 1 is MCQ, paper 2 is structured, paper 3 is free response, and then paper 4 is practical. For H1, there are only 2 papers. Paper 1 MCQ and paper 2 structured.
Paper 2 structured. So there's no essay questions, there's no practical.
For H1, the small essay question would be in the structured paper 2.
Okay.
So it's like a hybrid.
I see.
But definitely no practical.
Okay.
For H1.
I see.
Practical, that would also mean no planning questions for H1.
Okay, I see. So it's a straightforward, just more rote learning. What could that be? Or?
I don't think there's more rote learning. The mode of learning would be the same for both H1 and H2.
So in terms of skills test, it's still pretty much application based and deduction.
Yes.
Because I see that there is a step up definitely from secondary level of chemistry to JC chemistry, because we see so much application questions. And like for secondary, probably we can go through more of practice and trying to understand the questions better. And yes, definitely we are moving to skill-based questions and data-based questions. But how is this different at the JC level in terms of questions asked?
Definitely there will be more.
Okay.
Right. Common questions will not be common. Like what you have seen before, probably will not come up.
Okay, I see.
So you need to be prepared for the unknown.
I see.
So no longer rote learning, doing more means better.
I see. That's really, that can be very daunting for some of the students who are very used to like, I practice my tangent series and prelim questions, and I think I'm ready for the paper. So what is one thing which our viewers can bring like from this interview that they can apply for the H2 chemistry to do it better?
I think the most important for H1 or H2 is to understand what is going on.
Okay.
I think understanding is crucial. If you have been memorizing for Sec 4 and Sec 3 and it works, it will not work for A levels.
I see.
You need to know what is going on, then followed by practice, of course. And practice will only get you some there, and you need to be able to expose yourself to unknown questions.
I see.
So you need to kind of be comfortable in having a situation where you have never seen this kind of question before and know how to go about doing it.
I see.
So mentally also you need to be very strong.
I see.
Because you will get surprises. And if you are very used to getting down because you have never seen this kind of question before, it may affect your performance.
I see. So I think that's really a great difference then, because like last time we can just practice questions for Set 3, Set 4, and you do see like similar questions being repeated. But I think that's one thing our viewers can take from here, which is it's not about the amount of practice things, but it seems like you have to have an open mind, like what is going to happen, and and just like it, appreciate it, and you'll be able to like H2 chemistry and think that it's a topic which you can handle at least more.
Of course, hard work is important.
I
You
see.
still need to practice that,
I see.
but that's not the. It's not about working hard. It's about working smart.
And I think one question is because like a lot of students, when they move from Set 4 to take H2 chemistry, we know that it's an important prerequisite for some of the courses at university, like medicine, for example. I heard it's actually compulsory
Yes, medicine compulsory subject will be chemistry
and not bio.
and not bio.
I
So
see.
there are actually, I've got a few ex-students who studied physics and chemistry and they went on to do medicine.
I see.
Yeah, and that's perfectly okay.
Mm.
I think chem is one of the most common science subject that is a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Of course, there are certain niche area where they require biology. If I'm not wrong, pharmacy, if you want to do pharmacy, bio is the main subject of chem.
I see.
It used to be chem and then they changed to bio.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's only for some of the more specific courses, but general science disciplines and like engineering are involved, like chemical concepts, so it still requires H2 chem.
Yes, correct.
So, but H2 chem being a prerequisite, but how about H1 chem?
If you want to do science-related subjects in university, H1 Chem is not sufficient.
Okay.
Yeah, so people who want to do H1 Chem are basically thinking, I need to have a contrasting science subject,
I see.
but I'm not going to do science subject in university. So they will choose H1 Chem.
Okay, so I guess that is coming from the perspective of subject choosing. So probably H1 Chem is better for those who already decided, hey, I'm going to do like H2 computing, H2 economics, but I want to choose something easier as a contrasting subject. So that's why they choose H1 chemistry because they still like think that hey, they can handle it and it's also pretty interesting. Probably they find at the Set 3, Set 4 level. But I have another question because like especially like in J1, some of the students they struggle with H2 chemistry a lot, and they decide to drop it. What is your advice to such students?
I think every school has got different ways of doing. Some schools actually let all students do H2 in the first year.
I see.
And then, because most of the content in H2 in year 1 are it's the same as H1. There are slight differences, but it's okay to drop down from H2 to H1 if you think H2 is not for you or you need more time, because H1 definitely you will need less time to work on it. So that's for some schools, but some schools actually says you should start H1 straight away.
I see.
So it really depends on which school you're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about H1, because one consideration is if students drop to H1 and they still want to pursue, like for example, a science discipline or even want to apply to medicine, so that's definitely out of the cards for them.
Definitely cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
unless again, I'm not so sure about specific university courses, but if you know you want to do a specific course, you should actually go and find out what are the compulsory subjects, H2 compulsory subjects you need to have.
So I guess it's really unfortunate, like if someone who really wants to do medicine, or for example like chem engineering, and they struggle so much with chemistry at H2 level. So if they choose to drop to H1, to cope better with the subject, so they will be actually limiting their choices for university. But what if like they really want to keep the subject for H2 chemistry because of this subject combinations for university, but they are unable to do so? It's like due to school legislation.
Yeah, that's why you need to think carefully. So when you choose your subjects, don't think of it as these 2 years. Think further ahead. Like you kind of have an idea what area of I want to go into university. If you think you want to do medicine, if you want to do science related, then math and chem is important.
Yeah, I
and
think
it must be H2.
Yeah, I think that's one issue that we have for our students, that they choose a subject combination based on what they feel confident in
Mm.
instead of what the
Correct.
subject can bring
Yeah.
for in terms of opportunities.
Yeah, correct.
So I think it's very good for students at this point of time to talk to more people and to explore ideas and different areas where they can actually feel interested and do well as a career instead of just like going with the flow.
Yes, correct. Definitely don't go with the flow.
Yes.
It's just because your friends take it doesn't mean you should take it.
Yeah.
You need to consider what you want to do in the future,
Mm.
then work backwards from there and say, okay, if I want to do medicine, I need to have chem H2, math H2, and another science H2.
Okay, now coming back to the point about like in terms of academic debt. So we just want to understand some of the differences. For example, like in the topics taught between H1 and H2 chemistry.
There are some topics that are not in H1. Besides practical, besides planning, there is also some physical chemistry parts which are taught in H2. That means, for example, for energetics for H2, for H1 you don't have to deal with the last part, which is like Gibbs free energy, construction of Born-Haber cycles and all these things. So it's been cut out. For organic chem, there are no mechanisms for H1. For inorganic chem, there is no transition metals. So most of the topics, it's kind of cut a little bit at the end.
Yes,
Yeah.
and something came to my mind. One burning question I have is because our year of 2020 set force, most of them did not take organic chemistry, and we understand that organic chemistry is a big part in H2 chemistry. Roughly how much weightage, like in terms of physical chem, organic chem, inorganic chem, H2?
Okay, for H2, organic chem is about 40%.
40.
Physical chem is also about 40%.
Okay.
And then inorganic is about 20%.
Because we understand at the set 3 and set 4 level, in our syllabus, the chemistry is about 30%, and basically we weren't examined on that for the O levels and for IP, so probably just some schools like RI and Hwa Chong and Nanyang Girls, actually only RI and RGS did test organic chemistry, so probably about 10% of the syllabus. So what advice will you give to our viewers who have not touched on any organic chemistry?
The good news is actually it doesn't really matter.
Why?
Well, because when we go into organic chem, we really teach from scratch again.
I see.
Because organic chem is not done at the beginning of the year. It's done nearly at the end of year one. So, and we just have to assume that your organic knowledge is zero. So most schools will teach as if you have never done organic chem. Of course, if you have done organic chem, it may seem like, oh yeah, it seems familiar. But if you don't have that knowledge, I think it's fine. It's not that bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty comforting news for some of our viewers who are worried like, hey, am I able to catch up in the JC syllabus? But I think the crux is chemistry in general is a very fun thing, not just in terms of what is examined, but because like we can explore so many different things like relatable in our everyday lives. We can talk about doxycycline, and which is an antibiotic. Used. I was just reading about it. With very long half-life and very good for skincare and stuff, and many other interesting compounds which I think Mr. Lee will be able to share in our H2 classes. So now coming back to H2, having the spotlight on H2, we mentioned previously, hey, it has a practical component. Could you tell us more? What is examined in our paper 4?
Okay, paper 4 is about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
It consists usually of 2 to 3 practical skills. One usually involves titration.
Okay.
Okay, so that's very similar to the secondary school side, right? Then the other one will be QA.
Okay.
So QA, you need to kind of deduce what's going on. It can be inorganic QA or organic.
Organic QA, interesting.
Yes, yeah, which they will be exposed to in the 2 years.
Okay.
And then there is also a third experiment. It depends. It can be energetics, it can be kinetics. And then there's a planning question.
I see. So there are 4 components in total.
Yes,
Very
it's
interesting.
quite demanding.
Mm.
The planning question can be any topic.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
So and it can be related to the practical that is done before,
I see.
and then you continue with the planning question, or it can be a standalone.
Mm.
So there's a lot of uncertainty that a lot of students are afraid of in this case.
So, because I mean, like chemistry, we have so many different topics. So how do students like prepare better for a practical? Like if it's really into the unknown.
Okay, so for practical, the best way is to pay attention in your practical class. That means whenever you have a practical class, you can't just be a robot and just follow the steps and not knowing what's going on.
I see.
You need to read carefully, you need to understand why you're doing this practical. So be aware. And of course, once you've practiced the skill, you need to come back again when you're preparing for examinations. Because a lot of the time, the practical is only done once, and there is no coming back. Yeah, so there's a lot of skills there, so you need to pay attention
I see.
in practical class, especially.
Just because I'm pretty curious, so titration it can be either like acid-base titration or redox titration, right? Would there be any organic titration involved?
It can be also a precipitation titration.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so which is very interesting. It can also be a kinetics kind of experiment. So, but of course, kinetics experiment you still need to measure. So it's, when you're using a titration, you're just measuring something, right? It can be redox or it can be acid bases.
I see. So I think that's good food for thought. Like for some of our students who thought about like handling the practical paper ahead. So and we also understand that H2 syllabus can get a little bit more rigorous because like they have to understand about organic chemistry mechanisms and as well as with many topics interlinking. For example, like we learn that in electrochemistry, for example, at Set 4 level, okay, it's just like what ions are discharged and the effects of electrolysis. But we also see in H2 chemistry it's linking to, for example, like Gibbs free energy and equilibrium.
Yeah.
So how would you advise students to handle the H2 syllabus better?
Okay. I think the first few months in J1 is very crucial because those are the foundational topics. And your foundation, if it's weak, subsequent topics is built on the foundation. So if your foundation is weak, then your subsequent topics, you will find it tougher. So actually the first 6 months is very important.
I see.
So your chemical bonding, your stoichiometry, your energetics kind of thing builds up and then helps you in organic chemistry especially and further physical topics later. So I would say pay attention in the first 6 months and don't play too much in the first 6 months.
Yeah, because I see a common problem in among the J1s is, for example, like in the first 3 months, actually just like after March, when we are doing, for example, chem bonding and we do Vesper, and some students are like, it's too fast, I cannot understand. So what advice will you give to students like, hey, because we really know the first 6 months and this foundation work is crucial, it's just going to get more and more difficult and more application questions. So what advice will you give to the third month at that stage for students to?
I would say that for JC1 students, they have a lot of time in the first 6 months.
Okay.
And if you encounter problems in the first 6 months, don't try to push it to later. You have the most time in the first 6 months. Be brave about it, confront it, and solve it. And then, so that when you encounter more problems, you have time to solve it. Because if you push it to the end, it will just stack up and it will look
snowball.
Yeah, it will look impossible. And one of the main things you can do in O levels is you probably can do last minute studying, but for A levels you cannot do that. Yeah. So consistent work is very important. Make a habit out of it. Like, if you have certain problems, solve it within that day if possible. If not, solve it within a week.
I see.
Make it a habit.
Okay, and I think another very interesting thing is for our H2 level, we actually have very, very good content. Like all our schools, we provide a lot of resources, very good. And like you may even think that, hey, I have very good notes from school, I have very good notes from tuition center, but there's information overload. What's the best thing that we can do with all of this? Like there's so many things for us to grapple with.
Definitely, students are not short of information. In fact, they have too much information. So it's a matter of finding time in your schedule to sit down and read it. There must be some form of reading through certain materials, but it doesn't always mean you must always read it. So you just have to read it once or twice, okay, and get a sense of what's going on. You need to ask questions, and students, we always encourage students to ask questions because that's when they learn and make new connections in the brain. Right? So they must read, and then they must ask questions and then practice. So these three components are very important. Some of them just do one and neglect the other two. They don't do really well.
I see.
Or some people just practice and don't read, which is even worse. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I think that's very good. That's a very good tip for all our viewers here. So, and I guess this is one thing where you can take away from here, and not just deciding about like whether to take H1 or H2, but actually sit down, take time to think about what courses you want to study for the university level, because that will actually help you to decide your subject combi and give you more confidence to do well, and also with a very, very wise advice of having time, work, progression, meaning that you do your work consistently. So it seems like consistency is the key across any subject, be for H2 chemistry, physics, math or econs or bio. And any other things that which you'd like to share with our viewers?
No, actually. I think chemistry is still very enjoyable, but it is rigorous. Okay, so I'm not going to say that it's easy. It is definitely a jump from O levels. So students who take chemistry need to be mentally prepared that it is not just a simple step. It's actually a jump.
Yeah. So with that, I think with the mentality shift, it will actually help you to cope better for the H2 syllabus. So thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Lee, and we also thank our audience for joining us. And I hope this video and this session has been informative for you and educational for your choice of H1, H2 chemistry and for your subject decisions. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.
One cut.
One take. I hope you recorded it.
Oh yeah.